Selagi Siti mampu, Siti memang nak berbakti. Kerana Siti nak dia bebas.
To me, I think one that really struck out to me was the fact that Dangerous Drug Act 1952, which is this ordinance that contains different sections of, punishment for drug possession and distribution. That was, to my surprise, that was rooted from our colonial past. The rules that we have now, and the rules even back then, never worked because drug problems still persist in Malaysia and in Singapore.
39B is a section in the Dangerous Drugs Act which provides for the death penalty in cases of trafficking of dangerous drugs. My main concern with the death penalty is, and has always been, that it's not doing its job as it should be. It's not effective.
Not only do these, archaic drug laws don't work, like our prisons right now in Malaysia are running at 200% over capacity, and 60% of them are those with minor drug offenses.
News comes out that there's a drug bust. The CMB catches this, catches that. A lot of people are like, oh, good job, CMB, well done. You guys are doing a good job. But then, why don't they see the bigger picture why is this still happening when you say that the death penalty works? Even if they do end up in prison, like our prisons are, they call it like a rehab center, but there's no proper rehabilitation done there. So it's hard for them to come out of that thing or that circle because there's no proper treatment for them.
And the number of people who die because they OD and are afraid, and their friends are afraid to call the ambulance because they will all be arrested and could face the death penalty or, a very long-term sentence, that you can't get, access to housing and mental health care services and so many other things that are necessary for your well-being.
Siti cuma harap benda ni diselesaikan dengan segera, dapat selesai, dapat bebas lah. Takkan lagi tangguh dan sebagainya. And then kita orang punya family dapat together balik macam dululah.
Rather than making it a story about Dr.G, it's a story about these kids who are actually directly affected by these punitive drug laws, right?
It was very heartbreaking because I know exactly what she's going through. Like my brother was remanded since 2011 and he was only sentenced about 5 years later. So the process is also very long.
Part of my dad being incarcerated was that nobody wanted to talk about it. Nobody wanted to acknowledge that this had happened to us. And they would rather on just kept with that narrative without mentioning so actually, your dad has a health problem, and that's what it is, right? Addiction.
It's portrayed as something very evil in Singapore and I think in Malaysia too. So there's a lot of people who say that they deserve what they're getting.
Like when your family member is on the death row, there's this anticipatory grief. Like you are not sure when they're gonna pass away, but technically they're kind of gone already. So, to just be swinging these family members between hope and it's not gonna happen back and forth. It's cruel in the sense that you instill fake hope in them and then you take it away.
I think the other thing that's common in both the Malaysian and Singaporean experience is that many people who are on death row or facing capital punishment for drug offenses come from low-income families or families who are and come from poverty, right? And typically have faced many different stressors in their life or have experienced adverse childhood events. And strikingly, they're also often tend to be in Singapore minorities.
Daripada situ Siti start baca, rujuk orang dan sebagainya. And then ada rujuk juga dengan beberapa ustaz. Diorang cakap benda ni tak haram, selagi kita tak salah gunakan, tak salah pun. Sebab tu ada setengah orang, dia akan lebih prefer untuk rawatan alternatif macam guna herba-herba, rawatan kampung dan sebagainya. Bergantung kepada individu tu.
Even though a lot of people, use cannabis kind of recreationally or as they need it, right? It's not like one puff and then addiction forever ruins everything. But that's the narrative that exists in Singapore. And so that pushes people to think, or anyone who gets involved in distributing drugs and using drugs is a criminal who is hurting Singapore, who is, bring us down, and that it's very difficult to kind of shift the mind away from that.
So decriminalization is like to take out heavy punishment. For example, if you possess 5 grams of cannabis, you shouldn't get apprehended for that, and then or being put in jail for that. Especially for not for distribution. So it's also taking out capital punishment. So if you decriminalize and then legalize, that means you open the table for everyone to go safe route. And we know that around the world, we have seen more people accepting cannabis as method of pain management, and recognizing that cannabis through regulation can create safe consumption, and then for patients to ease and then tolerate pain.
I just wanted to share what I found really clarifying about Portugal's policy on drugs, and because it's like very 3 sharp positions. One is that, there's no such thing as a soft or hard drug, only healthy and unhealthy relationships with drugs. Mm-hmm. 2, that an individual's unhealthy relationship with drugs often conceals frayed relationships with the world around them, with themselves and loved ones, i.e. conceals trauma, right? And 3, the eradication of all drugs is an impossible goal, and therefore a more meaningful goal is to support people in saving and keeping people alive and keeping people well in whatever way that they want to define wellness.
There's one criticism that we've often had is that, when you do these sorts of campaigns, when you campaign for abolition of the death penalty, or when you work with families, you're giving families false hope.
Yeah. Okay, so this false hope thing, I was sharing it with Syed as well. As an inmate, from my brother's point of view, as an inmate, as someone who is facing the death penalty, there's no such thing as false hope. There's only hope. People shouldn't think that we are giving them false hope by campaigning and, talking about it and, fighting it. Because what else do they have but hope? So why do we want to diminish that hope for them? Really, what my brother says, there's no such thing as false hope for them, because they are literally fighting for their life.